Hola, my name's Julia Rodríguez, and I'm very excited to be your child's Spanish teacher this year. I would like to go over my classroom information sheet with you, just so we can be clear about how things will work in this room. First of all, if you want to contact me, the very best way to do so is through email. However, if you do need to speak with me, I am available Monday through Friday at 636-586-1050, and that's between 12:45 and 1:40 p.m. That's the 6th period plan. Another important piece of information that you will need is that if your student or you need access to resources that we use in class, those are available on my school website. In order to get to the school website, you can go to the DeSoto 73 School District homepage, and then from there, navigate to the high school. From the high school, you'll choose Departments, Foreign Language, and then Julia Rodríguez, and you'll find what you need right there. The next thing I would like to talk about are academics. There are 2 types of grades that we give in class. There are formative grades, which are 20% of your child's assessment, and summative grades, which make up 80%. Formative grades are the things that students do in order to learn the content. And that's why it's only 20% of the grade. These are things that you traditionally might remember as classwork or homework. And then we have summative assessments, which tend to be projects and big tests. That's why these are worth 80% of the grade, because these are showing what students have mastered. Have they mastered the learning that they've prepared using the formative work? Now, some students don't really see the value in doing formative work. However, most people I know aren't natural foreign language learners. Therefore, if you don't do the formative work, it's going to be near impossible to perform well on the summative work. You have to practice. You have to practice writing, speaking. You have to practice even listening. The more you do, the more proficient you'll become. For the grading, I think one of the things that parents don't understand with our 80-20 system is how to interpret their son or daughter's grades. So let's start with formative. Formative activities are in the grade book, and those are the things that students are doing in order to learn the material. That's why they're only 20% of the grade. Now, if your student has some low grades in their formative work, it's not really a cause for concern in terms of it doesn't affect the grade that heavily, and kids are going to make some mistakes along the way in the formative process. Where you would need to worry in formative grading is if your student is failing to turn in formative assignments. That means that he or she is not doing what is necessary in order to master the material. On summative grades, the tests and projects, those are the 80% of the grade. So, it is important that your child doesn't have any zeros in the summative column. It's also worth noting that sometimes, for example, if you get a mid-quarter grade and a student might only have 1 summative assessment in at the time of the mid-quarter, and let's say that student performed poorly on that summative. Yes, it's something that you need to take note of, but it's not usually worthy of grounding the student over. Let me explain why. Let's say that I'd been sick for 3 days, I came back, I took the test, and I scored a 60%, a low D. Now, that's the only summative assessment in the book. And so it looks to my parents as if I've been slacking and I'm about to fail the class. But that's not the case, because once more summatives go into the grade book, then my grade will improve. Remember, because summatives are 80% of the grade, it's going to have a big effect on that final outcome. If your student has a 0 in that column, remember, that's a problem. Now, if a child or a student fails a summative, it's not all lost either. I'm more concerned that a student will eventually learn the material than just be defined by a grade in a book. If that student who had a D or an F wants to retake their summative assessment, then I do allow that under certain conditions. First of all, a student must have completed their formative work before I would allow for a retake of a summative. But they also must do some remedial work, meaning I may need to reteach and they may need to practice more before they're ready to take the test. So grades are something that we work on, and they're not finalized until the very last minute. I usually give the kids a good warning too when, if they're in a certain situation, hey, it's time to get active and let's take care of the issues that we have. Ultimately it is their responsibility, and because students and parents have access to SIS, they should be able to check their grades on a daily basis. It's really ultimately that student's responsibility. If I've keyed something into the gradebook wrong and their grade is incorrect, then I want the student to address that. That's why I like for students to keep anything that I've returned, at least until the semester's over, to make sure that, their grade is okay. Talking about requirements for Spanish class, kids simply need a folder. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. And I would also like for your student to bring a pair of headphones with a microphone. If you look around your house, you probably don't even need to go out and buy this because you usually get one that comes with a cell phone. So if you have boxes with cell phones and your kid probably already has one, it's really not a big deal. Writing utensils, students are going to need pens, pencils, and highlighters. And then we'll also have a $2 fee for food tastings. We'll do a couple food things throughout the year, and the students bring their $2, then they can partake in food tastings. I would like for students to have their materials by Friday, August 26th. Cell phones. Now this one is a very important issue. Students here in DeSoto High School are allowed to use their cell phones during passing time and at lunch. However, there are certain occasions where using a cell phone can be useful in the Spanish class. But those are going to be times that I, as the teacher, determine. So therefore, cell phones are not to be visible in class unless granted specific permission by me. Let me tell you why. First of all, they have Chromebooks, so if they need to look up information, they'll be able to use those computers. That's why they're there. Second of all, many students are not using their time wisely when their cell phones are out. They are playing games, they're using Snapchat. So these are the things that we don't need to be distracted doing while we're trying to learn Spanish. If your child needs to text you because they've forgotten a uniform or they need you to bring their lunch money or whatever reason that might be, I'm a very reasonable person. All they have to do is say, hey, Mrs. Rodríguez, can I text my mom? I forgot my uniform. Of course you can. And then put the cell phone away. Computers. Students are going to need to follow the DeSoto School District policy for their use of computers. So nothing inappropriate, and I'm sure that will be reviewed more by the administration as school begins. One thing that I do not like for students to do, and I will consider it cheating if they do, is the use of Google Translate. Let me explain how this works. Let's say I tell the students to write me a paragraph in Spanish. Well, instead of sitting there and thinking how I would write, I would just type it up in English, copy, paste it into Google Translate, and then turn it in as my work. Any use of Google Translate will be considered cheating, and the student will be assigned a 0 on that particular assignment. First of all, Google Translate isn't smarter than a human being. Therefore, I can often tell when students are using it. But second of all, a student's cheating himself or herself if they're not processing the language. I'm going to teach your child how to use other tools so that they can process the language, looking up unfamiliar words, but there are things that just need to come out of your brain, and so the students are going to be learning that from me. So Google Translate is a definite no-no. The other definite no-no is if we are taking an assessment on the computer, having a multiple tab open or any other type of cheating is unacceptable, and a 0 will be assigned. Restroom. Students need to learn to use their time wisely. Our school is not that large, so there's time between classes to use the restroom. Once you figure out your routine, figure out which books you need to bring, maybe even from various classes, so that you make time in your day to use the restroom. I will allow each student 2 passes per semester. And after that, they're going to have to figure out ways to do it on their own. Responsibilities. I expect the students to come every day with their charged Chromebook. If they don't have it charged, they need to make sure their charger is with them every single day. I have outlets. So students should have no excuse for their Chromebook not functioning. Second of all, they need to turn in their assignments on time. Now this is where as parents this becomes a little bit tricky. If you don't have good internet access at home, and I do understand that. Some of you live in rural places, some of you are unable to afford it because it's very expensive because of where you live, and I do understand that. But sometimes your student's going to have to plan ahead and make appropriate decisions. So for example, if I know I have a big project due, waiting to the last minute at a house with no internet is not a good idea. I need to plan. I need to maybe plan to come to school early or stay after, maybe go down to the public library. The library here in DeSoto High School is supposed to be piloting some mobile hotspots that can be taken home. So there need to be ways that students, once again, by not waiting till the last minute, can complete what needs to get done. Once again, I'm very flexible. If there is a problem, just call me up. Or better yet, email me, and we'll see what we can do about the issue. Okay? Very easy to work with. Finally, behavior. In class, I expect students to be on task and not disruptive. So we do get to talk a lot in here because it's a language class, and students will have a lot of fun. We'll do a lot of cool activities. But if they're doing the type of things that are keeping other people from learning, then that will be an issue. I do also expect students to be in their seats when the bell rings, otherwise they will be considered tardy. Students may get assigned seats. It just depends, and I don't expect any dispute about assigned seats because I am trying to maximize the learning environment. So, there are some students that choose to sit by someone that they just have a hard time behaving around, and I'll have to just make adjustments. Let's see. This classroom has to have a positive and warm environment. We're learning a foreign language, and a lot of kids are going to be afraid to talk because they don't want to make a mistake. Well, I'm sorry to tell you, but the only way to learn a foreign language is by making mistakes, making them all the time. So your child, it's not their job to come in here and laugh at other people for making an attempt to learn a language. We all need to be a family here. We need to support each other. We need to laugh at ourselves when we do make mistakes because it's really not a big deal. It's how it's done. So anyone that I consider being inappropriate and ridiculing other students who are really trying to learn the language, they will be dealt with. And speaking about when I deal with students, I like to deal with students one-on-one. If a student's having trouble in my class, I expect he or she to advocate for himself or herself. I don't like confrontation. Not because I'm afraid of it, because I feel like a lot of times it's unnecessary. So if they want to speak with me privately about an issue they're having with me or having with another student, either out in the hallway we can do this, or after class, or before school, after school, if it's about their grades, they should really look to me as the first resort because we're the ones that are in this together every day. Parents aren't going to be able to solve their kids' problems for the rest of their lives. So, we really need to work on teaching our students to be responsible. I am, once again, looking forward to having your student in class, and I hope that we have a positive relationship, and I hope that they come home teaching you a little bit of Spanish. So thank you for your time, and have a wonderful day. Adios.